My daughter just won $150 million. And when I tried to congratulate her, she shoved me down in front of 30 parents at my grandson's elementary school and screamed, "I don't have a father!" But as I sat there on that cold classroom floor, watching 30 parents stare at me like I was some kind of burden, something didn't feel right about her sudden good fortune. You see, there's one thing my daughter didn't know about her old man. The Army taught me that when something seems too good to be true, you dig deeper. And what I found in the next 48 hours would destroy everything she thought she'd won. In my jacket pocket was evidence that would change everything. Security footage she didn't know existed. Documentation she thought I'd never kept. Proof of something that would turn her celebration into her worst nightmare. But before I tell you how a 68-year-old veteran took down his own daughter using nothing but patience and preparation, drop a comment letting me know where you're listening from. And if you love stories about underdogs who refuse to stay down, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because trust me, you won't want to miss how this ends. 2 days later, my daughter learned that you should never underestimate someone who's been watching, waiting, and documenting everything. Let me take you back to where this all began. My name is Gerald Kensington, and for 31 years I believed being a good father meant sacrificing everything for your child. I lost my wife Linda when Brielle was just 12 years old. Cancer took her in 6 months. As Linda lay dying in that sterile hospital bed, I made a promise that would define the next 3 decades of my life. I knelt beside her, took her cold hand in mine, and swore I would never let our daughter want for anything. "She'll have everything we dreamed of giving her," I whispered. Linda squeezed my hand with what little strength she had left. "Just love her, Gerald. Love her enough to let her grow." I thought I understood what she meant. I was wrong. After the funeral, I worked 2 jobs, driving truck during the week and security at the mall on weekends. Every dollar went toward Brielle's future. When she wanted art supplies, I bought them. When she needed a car for her senior year, I took out a loan. When she got accepted to State University, I felt like the proudest father alive. That pride lasted exactly 3 years. Brielle dropped out in her senior year, just months before graduation. She called me on a Tuesday afternoon, voice shaking. "Dad, I need to follow my passion. College is just holding me back from my art." My heart sank, but I supported her decision. After all, wasn't that what love meant? That was just the beginning of my life of sacrifice. For the next 7 years, I watched my daughter drift. Her art career consisted of selling maybe 3 paintings total. She moved from apartment to apartment, each time needing help with rent. Each time calling her old dad. "Just this once, Daddy," became her favorite phrase. I said yes every time. Then came the darkness. Brielle was 24 when I got the call that shattered my world. She was in the hospital, drug overdose. As I sat in that waiting room, hands trembling, I realized how blind I'd been to the signs. Weight loss, the frantic phone calls for money, the way she couldn't look me in the eyes anymore. When she survived, I made another promise, this time to myself. I would save her, no matter what it cost. I sold my house, the house Linda and I had bought as newlyweds, the house where Brielle took her first steps. I took every penny from that sale, $85,000, and paid for the best rehabilitation center in the state. "This is it, Dad," Brielle cried in my arms the day I checked her in. "I'm going to get clean. I'm going to make you proud." I believed her. God help me, I believed her. 3 months later, she was using again. 3 more times I paid for rehab. 3 more times she relapsed. Each time taking another chunk of my retirement, another piece of my hope. But when she met Simon Walker, I thought my prayers had finally been answered. I should have known better. Simon seemed like the answer to everything. Clean-cut, polite, said all the right things about helping Brielle stay sober. When they got engaged, I actually cried tears of joy. "He's good for me, Dad," Brielle said, and for the first time in years, her eyes were clear. But Simon had his own demons. I discovered them the night he showed up at my apartment at 2 in the morning, face swollen from what he claimed was a car accident. "They're going to hurt me," he whispered. Gambling debts. $63,000 to people who didn't accept payment plans. I stared at this man who was supposed to save my daughter. My savings account balance flashed in my mind. 68,000. My entire life's work sitting in a bank account that was about to become empty. "Please," he begged. "If something happens to me, what happens to Brielle?" That night, I emptied my 401k. 30 years of retirement planning, gone. But Simon promised this was the end. He promised he'd get help. Another promise broken. When Martin was born 2 years later, I thought maybe things would finally stabilize. A baby changes everything, right? As I held my grandson for the first time, feeling his tiny fingers wrap around mine, hope bloomed in my chest again. "We want you to move in with us," Brielle said. "Help with the baby. We could really use the help." I packed my few remaining belongings and moved into their spare room. I didn't realize I was moving into my own personal hell. Living with them opened my eyes to things I'd refused to see. The fighting, the lies, the way they whispered about money when they thought I was asleep. But there was one bright spot in my life. Tuesday traditions with Martin. Every Tuesday, I'd take my grandson to the corner store. He'd pick out a candy bar, and I'd buy my weekly lottery ticket. $5 on scratch-offs, 20 on Mega Millions. It was our time together, just grandfather and grandson. "Someday we're going to win big, Grandpa," Martin would say, bouncing in his car seat. "Maybe we will, buddy. Maybe we will." I always paid with my credit card, always kept the receipts. Old Army habits die hard. Every purchase documented, filed away in my bedroom drawer. The morning of March 15th started like any other Tuesday. Martin climbed into my truck, chattering about his science project. We drove to Murphy's Corner store like we had dozens of times before. The Ring doorbell camera caught it all. Me walking to the counter, Martin skipping beside me. Me handing over my credit card for the lottery ticket. Me carefully folding the ticket and placing it in my wallet. $20. Receipt time-stamped 10:47 a.m. When we got home, I slipped the ticket into my wallet, right behind my driver's license where I always kept them. Martin ran inside to show Brielle the new stickers he'd picked out. That lottery ticket was mine, bought with my money from my account. At least, I thought it was safely mine. You need to understand something about me. 40 years in the Army teaches you to document everything. Every expense, every transaction, every decision that matters. I kept a shoebox in my bedroom closet. Not much to look at, just a beat-up Nike box that once held Linda's running shoes. But inside that box was the complete financial history of my relationship with Brielle and Simon. Bank statements showing the $85,000 for her first rehab, credit card receipts for her car payments, utility bills, all in my name because their credit was shot, grocery receipts, medical copays, Martin's school supplies, even the receipt for Simon's gambling debt payment, $127,000 total. I'd calculated it down to the penny. Most people would call me obsessive. I called it survival training. The insurance policies were all in my name too. When they'd moved into this house, their credit couldn't qualify for homeowners insurance, so I'd co-signed. Technically, I was listed as primary resident and policyholder. I didn't think much of it at the time, just helping family. But as the weeks passed after Martin's birth, something started changing. Brielle and Simon would stop talking when I entered a room. Phone calls would end abruptly when I walked by. Late-night conversations and hushed whispers that made my skin crawl. I'd catch Simon looking at me with something that wasn't quite hatred, but close enough. "How long is he planning to stay?" I heard him ask Brielle one night. "I don't know," she replied, "but we can't afford to take care of him forever." My chest felt tight. Take care of me? I was paying their bills. I didn't know those papers in my shoebox would save my life. The change in their behavior wasn't subtle once you knew to look for it. Brielle started asking strange questions about my health, my will, my final wishes. Simon began making comments about nursing homes and what's best for everyone. Money started disappearing from my wallet. First a 20 here, a 50 there. When I mentioned it, they'd shrug and suggest I was getting forgetful. I wasn't forgetful. I was being robbed by my own family. The phone calls got worse. Hushed conversations that stopped the moment I appeared. planning sessions that didn't include me but were clearly about me. "We need to think about the timeline," I heard Simon tell Brielle. "Just be patient," she replied. "It won't be much longer." Timeline for what? What wouldn't be much longer? Then Brielle started asking about my will again. "Dad, you know I love you, right? And if anything happened, you'd want Martin to be taken care of?" My stomach twisted. "Nothing's going to happen to me." "Of course not," she said quickly. "I'm just saying, hypothetically." But her eyes didn't match her words. I started paying attention to everything. The way they looked at me when they thought I wasn't watching. The way conversations died when I entered the room. The way Simon's gambling habits seemed to be getting worse, not better. Red flags everywhere, but I was too afraid to acknowledge what they meant. Then came March 16th, the day everything changed. I went to buy groceries and reached for my wallet to check my lottery numbers from the day before. The ticket was gone. And that same night, Brielle announced she'd won $150 million. My hands shook as I searched through my wallet again and again. The lottery ticket wasn't just missing, it had been taken. But there it was on the evening news. My daughter holding a giant check, tears of joy streaming down her face. "I can't believe it," she told the reporter. "I just had a feeling about this ticket. Sometimes the universe rewards you when you need it most." The universe, right. I pulled up my credit card statement on my phone. There it was, clear as day. Murphy's Corner Store, March 15th, 10:47 a.m. $20. My card, my purchase. But I needed more than a receipt. I called Murphy's and asked about their security cameras. "Sure, we keep footage for 30 days, the manager said. "Why?" "I need to verify a purchase I made yesterday morning." That evening, while Brielle and Simon celebrated at some fancy restaurant, I drove to Murphy's. The manager, a kind woman named Sarah, pulled up the footage on her computer. There I was, clear as day, walking to the counter with Martin skipping beside me, handing over my credit card, taking the lottery ticket and carefully placing it in my wallet. "You want a copy of this?" Sarah asked. "Please." She burned it to a USB drive and handed it to me. "Everything okay, Mr. Kensington?" "It will be," I said. But I still needed one more piece of evidence. I drove home and checked the Ring doorbell app on my phone. Every time someone approached the front door, it recorded. And there it was, 64 seconds of video showing me and Martin returning from the store, me clearly holding my wallet. My daughter had stolen my winning lottery ticket, but proving it would be harder than I thought. The victory party was held at our house 3 days later. Brielle had invited everyone, neighbors, old friends, distant relatives, who suddenly remembered they cared about family. I watched from the kitchen as she played the role of gracious winner. Designer dress, professional makeup, photographers from the local newspaper snapping pictures of her with that giant check. "Brielle, what's the first thing you're going to buy?" asked one reporter. "A new house," she said without hesitation. "Something befitting our new circumstances." Our circumstances. I was standing right there, but I might as well have been invisible. The guests treated me like hired help. "Could you get me another drink?" "Where's the bathroom?" "Who's the old man?" And when someone finally asked Brielle who I was, she barely glanced in my direction. "Oh, that's just the help." The help. 31 years of being her father, reduced to those 3 words. Every sacrifice, every sleepless night when she was sick as a child, every dollar I'd given her, erased. I served drinks to people who celebrated my daughter's theft. I cleaned up their messes while they toasted her good fortune. And through it all, Brielle acted like I didn't exist. When the last guest left, she finally acknowledged me. "Dad, we need to talk about your living situation." Simon nodded. "This house is going to be too small for our new lifestyle. Maybe it's time you found somewhere more suitable. Somewhere more suitable. Like the street." I looked at Martin, my grandson, watching this conversation with confused 8-year-old eyes. That's when I knew I had to fight back. The insults got worse over the following weeks. They stopped pretending to include me in family decisions. They stopped inviting me to dinner when friends came over. They started talking about me like I wasn't there. "The burden is really affecting Martin," Simon told Brielle one evening. "I know, she replied. "We've been supporting him financially for months. It's not sustainable." Supporting me financially? I was paying the electric bill, the water bill, the insurance. Even Martin's school lunch account came out of my Social Security check. But the worst part wasn't the lies. It was watching what this was doing to Martin. My grandson started asking questions. "Why doesn't Mommy want you to eat dinner with us anymore, Grandpa? Why did Daddy say you're a problem?" I didn't have answers that wouldn't break his heart. The breaking point came on Martin's 9th birthday. Brielle threw him a party in the backyard. Bouncy house, catering, magician, the works. Lottery money at its finest. But I wasn't invited. I sat in my bedroom listening to children laughing and playing just outside my window. When Martin came looking for me, asking why I wasn't at his party, Brielle pulled him away. "Don't bother Grandpa right now, baby. He's not feeling well." Through the window, I watched my grandson's face crumple with confusion and disappointment. That night, I made a decision. I called Patricia Hayes, an attorney I'd found online who specialized in elder law. "I need to see you," I said. "It's about theft, fraud, and abuse." "How soon can you come in?" she asked. "Tomorrow morning." Patricia Hayes was a sharp woman in her 50s who'd seen every kind of family dysfunction imaginable. Her office walls were covered with thank you letters from clients who'd fought back against abusive relatives. "Tell me everything," she said. I laid out the whole story, the financial history, the lottery ticket theft, the security footage, the credit card receipts, the way they were treating me now that they thought they were rich. Patricia examined each piece of evidence with the intensity of a detective. "Mr. Kensington, this is actually a very strong case. The video evidence alone is compelling, but combined with the financial documents..." She looked up at me. "Are you prepared for this to get ugly? Because they are not going to go down without a fight." "Oh, they made it ugly when they stole from me." "There's something else you should consider," she continued. "Based on what you've told me about the home environment, we might want to petition for emergency custody of your grandson. This could get him away from what sounds like an increasingly toxic situation." My heart jumped. The thought of protecting Martin, of giving him a stable home away from their dysfunction, filled me with purpose I hadn't felt in years. What do I need to do? First, we file a civil suit to recover the lottery winnings. Second, we file criminal complaints for theft and elder abuse. Third, we petition the family court for emergency custody based on the unstable environment. She paused, studying my face. "Mr. Kensington, once we start this process, there's no going back. Are you ready for that?" I thought of Martin's confused face at his own birthday party. "I'm ready." While Patricia prepared the legal documents, I began gathering additional evidence. Every conversation, every insult, every moment of disrespect. I documented it all. I found text messages on an old phone Brielle had given me, messages between her and Simon that made my stomach turn. "We need to get him out of here soon," Simon had written. "I know," Brielle replied, "but we have to be smart about it. Once the lottery money clears, we can handle the situation." Handle the situation. That's what I'd become to them. But the most damaging text came from Brielle herself, sent to a friend. "God, having Dad around is such a burden. At least now that I won the lottery with that ticket I grabbed from his wallet, I can finally afford to get rid of him." She'd admitted it. In writing, she'd taken the ticket from my wallet. I screenshot everything and forwarded it to Patricia. The parent-teacher conference was scheduled for Thursday, March 30th. I'd been looking forward to it. The first family event they'd included me in since the lottery win. I should have known better. As we drove to Martin's school, the tension in the car was thick enough to cut. Brielle kept checking her phone, typing furious messages. Simon stared out the window, jaw clenched. "Remember what we discussed," Simon muttered to Brielle as we pulled into the school parking lot. What they'd discussed. Another plan I wasn't part of. I had no idea they were about to try to destroy me in front of 30 parents and teachers, but I also had no idea that their destruction would be recorded by every phone in that room. Lincoln Elementary School's conference room felt smaller than usual with 30-plus parents packed inside. Principal Davis had organized this meeting to discuss the upcoming fundraiser, but first she wanted to address some concerns about students' home lives affecting their academic performance. "We've noticed some behavioral changes in a few of our students," she began. "Increased anxiety, trouble concentrating, some regression in social skills." She looked directly at our family. "Martin Kensington has been particularly affected. His teachers report that he seems confused about family dynamics and often asks questions about stability at home." I felt Brielle tense beside me. Simon's leg began bouncing nervously. "We understand that Martin's grandfather recently moved in," Principal Davis continued. "Sometimes these transitions can be challenging for children." That's when Brielle stood up. Her voice was shaking, but not with nervousness, with something else, something calculated. "I need to say something," she announced to the room, "about the instability you mentioned." Every head turned toward us. My chest felt tight. "This is very difficult for me," she continued, her voice growing stronger. "But I can't let my son suffer anymore because I've been too ashamed to tell the truth." The room went completely silent. Even the air conditioning seemed to stop humming. Brielle turned and looked directly at me, her eyes filled with what looked like genuine pain, but felt like pure poison. "I need to tell you all the truth about this man." My hands began to shake. Whatever was coming, I knew it was going to destroy me, but I had no idea how completely. "This man is not my father," Brielle announced, her voice carrying across the silent room. "Not anymore." Gasps echoed around us. Parents shifted uncomfortably in their seats. All eyes were on me now, burning with judgment and curiosity. "For years, we've been supporting him financially," she continued, tears beginning to stream down her face. "He moved in with us claiming he needed help, but the truth is he's become a burden we can no longer carry." My chest felt like it was being crushed. This couldn't be happening. He's verbally abusive to my son. He's emotionally manipulative with our family. And despite winning the lottery recently, I've realized that money can't fix the damage he's done to our home. Simon placed a supporting hand on her shoulder, the perfect picture of a husband protecting his wife from a toxic family member. "We've tried to help him," Simon added, his voice heavy with false concern, "but he's become increasingly demanding and hostile. Martin comes home from school afraid to be in the same room with him." Lies, all lies, but looking around the room, I could see people believing every word. Principal Davis looked at me with something between pity and suspicion. "Mr. Kensington, would you like to respond to these allegations?" My mouth felt like cotton. My tongue wouldn't work. Every eye in the room was judging me, condemning me based on my daughter's performance. I started, but Brielle wasn't finished. "I'm done," she said loudly. "I'm done enabling this dysfunction." And then she shoved me. The push wasn't hard, but I wasn't expecting it. At 68, your balance isn't what it used to be. My feet tangled and I stumbled backward. The concrete wall hit my shoulder as I fell, sending sharp pain through my arm. I landed hard on the classroom floor, the impact jarring through my bones. "Get out of our lives!" Brielle screamed, standing over me as I struggled to get up. "I don't have a father. This man is nothing to us." The room erupted in chaos. Parents gasped and pulled their children closer. Someone shouted for the school nurse. Principal Davis was calling for calm, but her voice was lost in the mayhem. Martin broke free from Simon's grip and ran toward me. "Grandpa!" he cried, his small hands reaching for my face. But Simon grabbed him, pulling him back. "Stay away from him, Martin. He's dangerous." Dangerous. A 68-year-old veteran sitting on a classroom floor was dangerous. I pushed myself up slowly, my shoulder throbbing. The room was spinning slightly, voices fading in and out like a broken radio. But even through the pain and humiliation, even as 30 parents stared at me like I was some kind of monster, I remained focused on one thing. In my jacket pocket, my fingers found the USB drive containing the security footage from Murphy's Corner store. They had just declared war, but they had no idea who they were fighting. I stood up slowly from the classroom floor, my shoulder aching but my mind crystal clear. Principal Davis approached me with obvious concern. "Mr. Kensington, we should call someone. You took quite a fall." "I'm fine," I said quietly, straightening my jacket. "Just need a moment." The irony wasn't lost on me. I was the one who'd been attacked, yet parents were gathering their children and heading for the exits, whispering among themselves. Some shot sympathetic glances my way. Others looked at me with suspicion, wondering what kind of man gets attacked by his own family in public. Martin was crying now, reaching for me over Simon's shoulder. "I want my grandpa," he sobbed. "Hush," Simon told him. "Grandpa needs to go away now." Go away. After giving them everything I had, after sacrificing my retirement, my home, my dignity to keep them afloat. I walked slowly toward the parking lot, feeling every eye in the building watching me leave. My truck keys felt heavy in my hand. My shoulder throbbed with each step. But as I reached the parking lot, I pulled out my phone and made a call. "Patricia, it's Gerald Kensington. We need to move faster than we planned." "What happened?" "They just assaulted me in public, in front of 30 witnesses." "Where are you now?" "Driving to your office. And, Patricia, make sure the paperwork is ready. Tomorrow we go to war." That night in my motel room, I couldn't sleep. Not because of the throbbing in my shoulder, though the pain was constant. Not because of the humiliation, though the shame burned like acid in my chest. I couldn't sleep because for the first time in 3 decades, I felt something I'd almost forgotten. Righteous anger. I spread all my evidence across the motel bed like a general planning a campaign. Credit card receipts, bank statements, security footage, text messages where Brielle admitted taking the ticket from my wallet. 31 years of unconditional love and support, documented down to the penny. I wrote a letter to Martin, explaining why Grandpa had to go away for a while, explaining that sometimes adults make bad choices and other adults have to fix them. I sealed it in an envelope and wrote for Martin on the front. Someday, when he was old enough, he'd understand. Then I called Patricia again. "First thing tomorrow morning, I want everything filed. The civil suit, the criminal complaint, the custody petition." "Gerald, are you sure you're ready for this? Once these papers are served, your relationship with your daughter will never recover." I thought about Brielle standing over me as I lay on that classroom floor. I thought about Martin crying for his grandpa while being held back from comforting me. "There's no relationship left to recover," I said. "My daughter declared war tonight. Tomorrow she learns what happens when you attack a veteran." Patricia Hayes was waiting for me with a stack of legal documents when I arrived at her office at 8 a.m. sharp. My shoulder was stiff and sore, but my resolve was stronger than ever. "How are you feeling this morning?" she asked, noting the way I favored my left arm. "Ready to fight. Let's do this." She spread the papers across her conference table. Civil suit for theft of the lottery ticket and reimbursement of all financial support. Criminal complaint for elder abuse and fraud. Emergency custody petition for Martin based on unstable home environment. The evidence was overwhelming. Ring doorbell footage showing me purchasing the ticket. Credit card receipts proving it was my money. Bank statements documenting every dollar I'd given them over the years. Text messages where Brielle admitted taking the ticket from my wallet. "The Lottery Commission will freeze all payments pending resolution of the civil suit," Patricia explained. "They can't touch a penny until this is resolved." "How long until they're served?" "Court clerk is filing everything this morning. Sheriff's Department will serve papers by end of business today." I signed each document with steady hands. My signature, witnessed and notarized, declaring war on my own daughter. "One more thing," Patricia said. "I've contacted Child Protective Services. Given the public nature of yesterday's assault, they're opening an immediate investigation. 24 hours ago, I was a broken-down old man living on their charity. Today, I was taking my life back." The call came at 2:47 p.m. I was sitting in a diner, drinking coffee and watching the news coverage of local woman wins a $150 million jackpot when my phone rang. "Mr. Kensington, this is Sheriff's Deputy Martinez. We've just served the papers to Brielle Walker and Simon Walker at 1247 Oak Street." How did they react? Let's just say they seemed surprised by the scope of the allegations. I could imagine. They thought they'd destroyed me last night. They had no idea I'd spent months gathering evidence, years documenting their abuse, decades learning how to fight back. "The Lottery Commission has been notified," the deputy continued. "All payments are frozen pending resolution of the civil suit." Frozen. Their $150 million locked away until they could prove they hadn't stolen it from me, which they couldn't, because they had. My phone buzzed with incoming calls. Brielle, Simon, numbers I didn't recognize, probably reporters who'd gotten wind of the story. I turned the phone off. An hour later, I drove past the house where I'd lived for 2 years, paying bills and raising my grandson while they treated me like garbage. There were news vans parked outside, reporters trying to get statements, neighbors gathered on sidewalks, pointing and whispering. Through the front window, I could see Brielle pacing frantically, phone pressed to her ear. Their world was collapsing. Mine was just beginning. I spent that evening in my motel room, packing the few belongings I'd rescued from the house. Army uniforms I hadn't worn in years, photos of Linda, pictures of Martin as a baby. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. Through the peephole, I saw Patricia Hayes standing in the hallway with a manila folder. "We need to talk," she said when I opened the door. She sat on the edge of my bed, spreading documents across the cheap comforter. "The Lottery Commission called. They've conducted a preliminary review of your evidence." My heart stopped. "And?" "They're convinced the ticket was purchased with your credit card. The security footage is conclusive. They're prepared to testify that you are the rightful owner of the winning ticket." Relief flooded through me like warm water. "But that's not all," Patricia continued. "CPS completed their emergency assessment. Between your daughter's public assault on you and the evidence of financial abuse, they're recommending immediate removal of Martin from the home." "When?" "Tomorrow morning. And they're prepared to place him with you pending a full custody hearing." I sat down heavily in the motel's single chair. In less than 48 hours, I'd gone from being a beaten-down victim to potentially having custody of my grandson and legal ownership of $150 million. "There's one more thing," Patricia said softly. "Your daughter wants to talk." The legal machinery moved with surprising efficiency. By Thursday morning, every court in 3 counties knew about the case of the stolen lottery ticket. Local news had picked up the story. Grandfather claims daughter stole $150 million winning ticket. The courthouse was packed with reporters, curiosity seekers, and supporters, including a delegation from the American Legion who'd heard about an elderly veteran being abused by his own family. Judge Williams reviewed the evidence with the thoroughness of someone who'd seen every kind of family dysfunction imaginable. The security footage played on screens throughout the courtroom, showing me clearly purchasing the ticket with my own credit card. "The evidence is overwhelming," she announced. "Mr. Gerald Kensington is the rightful purchaser and owner of the lottery ticket in question." Brielle and Simon sat at the defendant's table, their expensive lawyer whispering furiously in their ears. But there was no defense against video evidence, credit card records, and text messages where Brielle admitted taking the ticket from my wallet. "Furthermore," Judge Williams continued, "the court finds sufficient evidence of elder abuse to warrant criminal prosecution. The defendant's physical assault on her elderly father, witnessed by multiple parties, combined with documented financial exploitation, constitutes clear violations of state elder abuse statutes." I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders that I didn't even know I'd been carrying. "As for the custody matter," the judge said, looking toward Martin, who was sitting with a court-appointed advocate, "this court awards temporary custody to Gerald Kensington, pending a full evaluation." Martin's face lit up like Christmas morning. Justice was finally being served. The domino effect was swift and devastating. Within hours of the court ruling, the IRS launched a formal investigation into Brielle and Simon's tax filings. The Lottery Commission's cooperation had revealed evidence of previous unreported gambling winnings, undeclared cash income, and fraudulent deductions. Simon's gambling debts, which we thought had been paid off, turned out to be just the tip of the iceberg. Federal investigators discovered offshore accounts, money laundering through shell companies, and connections to illegal gambling operations that made my $63,000 payment look like pocket change. "Your son-in-law is looking at federal charges," Patricia explained during our evening debrief. "Wire fraud, money laundering, tax evasion. This goes way beyond what we originally filed." The media attention was intense but mostly supportive. Social media had picked up the story with hashtags like #JusticeForGerald and #ElderAbuseIsReal. My GoFundMe for legal expenses had raised over $50,000 from complete strangers who believed in standing up to family bullies. Local veteran organizations rallied around the case. The VFW posted about it on their national website. The American Legion offered to cover all my legal expenses going forward. "You've become a symbol," Patricia said, "for everyone who's ever been taken advantage of by their own family." I didn't want to be a symbol. I just wanted to protect my grandson and reclaim my dignity. But as I read the messages of support flooding my email, I realized something powerful. I wasn't alone. There were thousands of people out there who understood exactly what I'd been through, and they were cheering for me to win. The emergency custody hearing was a formality. Child Protective Services had conducted a thorough investigation of both households, and their recommendation was clear. The child has expressed a strong preference to live with his grandfather, the social worker testified. In our assessment, Mr. Kensington provides a stable, nurturing environment free from the chaos and dysfunction present in the parent's home. Martin's teacher from Lincoln Elementary took the stand next. Since the incident at the parent conference, Martin has been withdrawn and anxious. He's repeatedly asked if his grandfather is okay and when he can see him again. The teacher looked directly at Judge Williams. That child loves his grandfather more than anything in this world. Principal Davis testified about the violence she'd witnessed. "I've never seen anything like it." Mr. Kensington was respectful throughout the entire conference until his daughter became physically aggressive. When they called Martin to speak privately with the judge, my heart broke. He was so small in that big courtroom chair, but his voice was steady. I couldn't hear what he said, but I could see Judge Williams nodding and taking notes. After 10 minutes, she dismissed him with a gentle expression. "Based on all evidence presented," Judge Williams announced, "temporary custody is awarded to Gerald Kensington. Family Services will conduct ongoing supervision, with a full hearing scheduled in 6 months." Martin ran to me across the courtroom and I caught him in my arms. For the first time in months, he felt safe. "Are we going to live together now, Grandpa?" "Yes, buddy. We're going to be just fine." The community response was overwhelming. Parents from Lincoln Elementary who had witnessed the assault started reaching out, apologizing for not intervening, offering support. "I should have said something," one mother told me in the grocery store, "but it happened so fast and we didn't know what to think." "Nobody expects to see a family assault at a school meeting," I replied. "It's not your fault." But the most surprising support came from an unexpected source: social media. Someone had recorded the parent conference on their phone and posted it online. Within days, the video had millions of views and thousands of comments supporting me. #JusticeForGerald was trending nationally. The video didn't lie. You could see Brielle's calculated performance, her fake tears, her deliberate escalation to violence. You could see my shocked reaction, my confusion, Martin crying and reaching for me while Simon held him back. The court of public opinion had rendered its verdict. I was the victim, not the villain. Major news networks picked up the story. Daughter assaults elderly father at school meeting. Daughter steals father's lottery winnings. Veteran fights back against family abuse. I declined most interview requests. But I did agree to speak with a local veterans magazine about elder abuse in military families. "We take care of our own," I told them. But sometimes family members think that means we're weak or easy targets. They're wrong. The interviewer asked what advice I'd give to other seniors facing family abuse. "Document everything," I said, "and never be ashamed to fight for your dignity." Brielle's desperate counterattack came exactly 1 week after the custody hearing. Her new lawyer, a slick character from downtown who specialized in character assassination, held a press conference outside the courthouse. "Gerald Kensington is a troubled veteran suffering from PTSD and paranoid delusions," he announced to a cluster of cameras. "His military service, while honorable, left him psychologically unstable and prone to outbursts. They painted me as a dangerous, delusional old man who had terrorized his family for years. According to their narrative, Brielle had bought the lottery ticket with her own money and I'd constructed an elaborate fantasy to steal her winnings. He threatened to harm them if they tried to make him move out, the lawyer claimed. My clients lived in fear for their safety. It was a bold strategy. Attack the victim's credibility and hope public sympathy shifts. For about 6 hours, it almost worked. Social media buzzed with questions about whether a veteran with PTSD could be trusted. Conservative commentators suggested this was about ungrateful seniors. Liberal commentators worried about stigmatizing mental health issues. But then Patricia Hayes held her own press conference. She brought the Ring doorbell footage. In high definition with perfect audio, the video showed me peacefully purchasing the lottery ticket, treating Martin to candy, and driving home. No paranoia, no delusions, no violence. Just a grandfather taking his grandson to the store. Judge for yourselves, Patricia said simply, letting the footage speak. The truth has a way of cutting through lies like sunlight through fog. The final evidence that destroyed their case came from the most unexpected source, Simon's own financial records. Federal investigators, following the money trail from his gambling debts, discovered a pattern of fraud that stretched back years. Offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, shell companies designed to hide assets, tax evasion schemes that made their lottery theft look like petty crime. They've been running long-term financial fraud operations, Patricia explained, spreading bank documents across her conference table. The lottery ticket was just their latest score. The documents painted a picture of sophisticated criminals, not desperate family members. Simon had been laundering money through fake businesses for over 5 years. Brielle had been underreporting income from various sources, including an art gallery she owned under a false name. They targeted you specifically because you were documented as having substantial assets, Patricia continued. Your military pension, your social security, your previous home equity, they saw you as a long-term financial resource. The investigators had found emails between Brielle and Simon discussing managing the old man's assets and maximizing the inheritance timeline. Cold, calculating discussions about my death and their financial benefit. The IRS criminal investigation expanded to include wire fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy charges. The local DA added elder abuse, theft, and fraud to their state charges. They're looking at serious federal time, Patricia said. This isn't just family drama anymore. This is organized criminal activity. I felt sick reading their emails about my death. But I also felt validated. I hadn't been paranoid or delusional. I'd been the target of professional criminals who happened to share my DNA. Moving out of that motel and into a real home with Martin was like stepping from darkness into daylight. The apartment wasn't fancy. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, small kitchen. But it was ours. Clean, safe, and free from the toxicity that had poisoned our lives for so long. Martin helped me unpack the few possessions I'd salvaged. He found the shoebox full of receipts and documents that had saved us. What's all this, Grandpa? Evidence, I said, then thought better of it. Proof that I always took care of you and your mom. Are you going to keep it forever? I looked at the box that had documented years of financial abuse, that had provided the evidence to win our case, that had proven my innocence when they tried to destroy me. No, buddy, I think it's time to throw this away. We walked together to the apartment complex dumpster. Martin watched solemnly as I dropped the shoebox into the trash. Does this mean the bad stuff is over? The bad stuff is over, I confirmed. That evening, we established new traditions. Homework at the kitchen table, dinner together every night, bedtime stories that didn't involve fear or confusion. The court had awarded me full custody, pending Brielle and Simon's sentencing. The Lottery Commission had transferred the full $150 million to my account, but the real prize was sitting across from me, working on his math homework and asking if we could have pancakes for breakfast. The sentencing hearing was held on a gray Tuesday morning in October. I sat in the gallery with Martin beside me, watching justice finally being served. Simon went first. Federal charges of money laundering, wire fraud, and tax evasion earned him 3 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years of supervised probation and restitution requirements that would follow him for decades. Brielle's sentence was more complex. 18 months in county jail for elder abuse and theft, plus court-ordered psychological evaluation and financial counseling. The judge also imposed a permanent restraining order, preventing her from contacting Martin or me without court approval. The defendant's actions represent a betrayal of the most fundamental family bonds, Judge Williams said. Mr. Kensington gave his daughter everything, his home, his savings, his trust, and she repaid him with theft, abuse, and public humiliation. As they led Brielle away in handcuffs, she turned and looked at me one final time. No anger now, no defiance, just the hollow look of someone who had finally realized the true cost of her choices. Martin squeezed my hand. "Are they going away forever, Grandpa?" "For a while," I said. "But more importantly, we're free to build our own life now." The house on Oak Street was foreclosed 3 weeks later. Their lottery dreams had become everyone's nightmare, but ours were just beginning. Some bridges, once burned, should stay that way. A year later, Martin was thriving in ways that amazed his teachers and counselors. His grades had improved dramatically. He'd made new friends. The anxiety and confusion that had marked his early childhood were fading like bad dreams. We'd established routines that worked for both of us. School mornings started with pancakes and homework review. Evenings ended with books and conversations about his day. "Grandpa, do you miss Mommy?" he asked one night as I tucked him into bed. It was a question I'd been dreading and preparing for in equal measure. "I miss the person I thought she was," I said carefully. "The little girl I raised and loved, but the woman who hurt us? No, buddy, I don't miss that person." "Do you think she misses us?" "I think she's learning to understand the choices she made." Martin nodded with the serious expression of a child processing complex adult emotions. "I'm glad I live with you now," he said. "Me too, buddy. Me too." And we'd used a small portion of the lottery money to establish a college fund for Martin, donate to veteran organizations, and set up a foundation for elder abuse victims. The rest sat in conservative investments, providing security without changing who we were. Money hadn't made me happy. Standing up for myself had. Protecting my grandson had. Building a life based on mutual respect and genuine love had. Everything else was just numbers. The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning in March, exactly 1 year after this all began. Martin was at school. I was reading the paper over coffee when I saw the prison postmark. Brielle's name in the return address corner made my hands shake slightly as I opened it. "Dad," it began, "no manipulation this time, no demands or excuses. I've had a year to think about what I did to you, to us, to Martin. I've been in counseling, attending addiction recovery meetings, trying to understand how I became the person who could steal from her own father and assault him in public. I read every word twice, looking for the angle, the manipulation, the trap, but there wasn't one. You spent 31 years being the father I needed, and I spent the last 3 years being the daughter you deserved to disown. I stole your lottery ticket. I abused your generosity. I destroyed our family with my greed and addiction." The letter continued for 2 pages. No request for forgiveness, no manipulation about wanting to see Martin, no attempts to minimize her actions or blame her choices on circumstances. Just raw accountability for everything she'd done. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she concluded. "I don't expect anything from you anymore. I just wanted you to know that I finally understand what I threw away. You were the best father anyone could ask for. I'm sorry I wasn't the daughter you deserved." I held the letter for a long time, tears falling onto the prison stationery. Some wounds heal, some relationships can be rebuilt, but some bridges, once burned, become the foundation for something better. Simon's downfall was swift and complete. 3 years in federal prison was just the beginning. The gambling addiction that had started our nightmare had continued even behind bars. Contraband phones, betting on prison sports leagues, owing money to people who collected debts with threats instead of lawsuits. He was transferred to protective custody twice after confrontations with inmates he owed money to. The federal investigation had revealed the true scope of his criminal enterprise: money laundering for organized crime, tax evasion totaling over $2 million, identity theft involving dozens of elderly victims across 3 states. I wasn't his only target, just his most successful one. When he was finally released, it was to a world that had moved on without him. No job prospects for a convicted felon, no family to take him in, no skills beyond manipulating vulnerable people and placing bets he couldn't cover. Martin never asked about him. In our house, Simon Walker simply ceased to exist. Not out of hatred. Hatred requires emotional investment. Out of complete irrelevance. Some people teach us what love looks like, I told Martin one evening when we were discussing the different kinds of people in the world. Other people teach us what love isn't. What did Simon teach us? That being family isn't about genetics, I said. It's about how you treat people, how you protect them, how you show up when things get hard. Martin nodded solemnly. He didn't show up? Nobody. He didn't. Some people are worth fighting for, others are worth fighting against, and some aren't worth thinking about at all. The community that had witnessed my humiliation became the community that celebrated my vindication. Lincoln Elementary School invited me to speak at their Veterans Day assembly. Principal Davis introduced me as a reminder that courage isn't about the battles you fight overseas, but sometimes the battles you fight at home. Parents who had watched me get pushed down on their children's classroom floor now stopped me in grocery stores to ask how Martin was doing, to share their own stories of family dysfunction, to thank me for showing them that it was possible to fight back against abuse, even when it came from people you loved. The Veterans Administration asked me to speak at elder abuse prevention seminars. Standing at podiums across the state, I told audiences full of seniors about the importance of documentation, legal preparation, and refusing to accept mistreatment from anyone, including family. Blood doesn't give someone the right to drain yours, became my signature line. The American Legion honored me with their Service Beyond Service award, recognizing veterans who continue fighting for others after their military careers end. But the recognition that meant the most came from an unexpected source. A teacher at Martin's school pulled me aside during a parent conference. I wanted you to know that Martin talks about you constantly, how you taught him that standing up for yourself isn't mean, how you showed him that love means protecting people, not enabling them. She paused, choosing her words carefully. That boy worships you, and from what I've seen, he has good reason to. From victim to voice, from doormat to defender. Sometimes the most important victories are the ones that change how you see yourself. 2 years after the assault that changed everything, I sat in my living room watching Martin work on a school project about family heroes. Who are you writing about? I asked. You, he said without looking up from his notebook. Why me? Because you taught me that it's okay to say no to people who hurt you, even if they're family. He showed me his project, hand-drawn pictures of us fishing, cooking dinner, doing homework together, simple moments that represented safety, stability, and unconditional love. My teacher says some kids don't know their grandpas, Martin continued, but I get to live with mine and learn about being strong. The lottery money had given us financial security, but it hadn't changed who we were. We still lived in our modest apartment, still cooked dinner together every night, still maintained the simple traditions that made us happy. I'd established a foundation for elder abuse victims with $10 million of the winnings. Martin's college fund was secured. The rest was invested conservatively, providing steady income without the flashy lifestyle that had corrupted Brielle and Simon. Grandpa, do you think I'll be strong like you when I grow up? I looked at this remarkable boy who had survived family chaos, witnessed adult dysfunction, and still managed to maintain his kindness and optimism. You're already stronger than me, I told him. You learned these lessons at 9 years old. It took me 68 years. He grinned and went back to his project. Money didn't change me. Standing up for myself did. But watching Martin grow up knowing his worth, that changed everything. 5 years later, I keep that $20 lottery receipt in my wallet. Not as a trophy, but as a reminder. A reminder that sometimes the smallest things, a piece of paper, a timestamp, a moment of preparation, can save your life. Martin is 13 now, honor roll student, starting pitcher on his baseball team, and the kind of young man who stands up for other kids being bullied at school. When I ask him where he learned that courage, he always says the same thing. From you, Grandpa. You showed me it's never too late to fight back. Brielle was released after serving her full sentence. She sends a birthday card to Martin every year, but doesn't ask to see him. The return address changes frequently. Different cities, different attempts to rebuild a life she destroyed with her own choices. I hope she finds peace. I hope she builds something meaningful from the wreckage of her mistakes. But I don't need to be part of that journey. The foundation I established has helped over 300 elderly Americans fight back against family financial abuse. We provide legal support, documentation training, and emotional counseling for seniors who thought they had no choice but to accept mistreatment from their own children. Love doesn't mean letting people destroy you, I tell them. Real love includes boundaries. Sometimes people ask if I regret how things ended, if I wish there had been another way to handle the situation. I think about Martin, safe and thriving, and learning that he has value beyond what he can provide other people. I think about the hundreds of seniors who found their voice through our foundation. I think about the fact that I sleep peacefully every night, knowing I chose dignity over dysfunction. Regret? No. The only thing I regret is waiting so long to realize that the person who gives the most has the most power to say, enough. That $20 receipt taught me the most expensive lesson of my life. Sometimes standing up for yourself is the most important battle you'll ever fight. And sometimes you have to lose everything to discover you had the power to win all along.